Hey guys, Jane here, and I'm coming to you today with my mid-month September wrap-up. This may end up being part one of a wrap-up at the end of the month. I don't know yet. My last wrap-up just was so long that I thought I really need to try to combine it this month and give you two shorter wrap-ups because going through the amount of books I did last month was just very difficult, and the video ended up being so long and I felt like it didn't really do any of the books justice. So I wanted to talk to you about the 4 books I've read so far this month. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot. My goal is usually 8 books. I am in the middle of reading 2 other books right now that I will be finishing probably in the next couple days, so I expect there will be more than 4 books read in the second half of the month, which is fine. It just means that this is going to be a little short, and it's possible that part 2 is going to be a little bit longer, but at least it's not all crazy and we're not doing another 17 book wrap up like last month. So we're going to be grateful for that. Okay, so of the 4 books I've read this month, 1 was an audiobook, 1 was an ebook, and then 2 were physical books. The first book I read was a nonfiction book for writers, and it's called Fuck the Details, Fewer Words, Sharper Stories. It's a Stone Tablet Single Book 5. Now, last month, my wrap-up, I said that I read several books by the Sterling and Stone group, and this is one of their books. And I did tell you last month that I've never given one lower than a 4. Until now. I did give this one a 3. Now, I will say before that I am naturally an underwriter, so I don't necessarily have the problem of needing to trim down my details. I tend to need to do the opposite, which is add details. So it's possible that this book really just wasn't for me because I'm not the audience. It's also by Joel Quinn, who is somebody I haven't read before in the Sterling and Stone group. And if you're not familiar with them, they're not exactly a publishing company. They're a group of authors who work together and create books, both fictional and nonfiction. So I've not read Joel before, and I didn't love his voice as much as I love the voice of the 3 people who are on their podcast for the group. So I started out listening to Sean, Dave, and Johnny, and they're kind of who I consider the core Sterling and Stone group. Now, over the years, they've added other people and they bring them in on podcasts to talk occasionally, but those are the 3 main guys, and I love their voice. They're hilarious, and all of the books I'd read up to this point were theirs. This is the first one that wasn't, and I do think I was a little thrown by the voice not being as fun and as casual and as just talky. I really enjoy the other guys' how personal it is. It's like they're sitting there chatting with you, and this guy, I didn't feel that from his writing, so I didn't love the author voice as much. I also, as I said, tend to be an underwriter, so I wasn't in love with the content. I didn't necessarily learn anything that I found super valuable. But if you are an overwriter and a beginner, this was probably a worthwhile book to give a try to. The other thing that I thought was kind of ironic is this book feels like it's a little bit detailed. Like, it feels like there's more words than there needed to be, and I kept waiting for him to be like, yes, I did that ironically, and I never saw that he did. So I was like, this book is about cutting details, and there's all these what I felt were excessive details, and I'm like, okay, so now hit the punchline, see what I've been doing all along that was excessive. I never got the punchline. I'm not sure if he realized he was doing it or not. And again, that's my opinion. I know I've looked at reviews. A lot of other people really, really love this book. And if you are an overwriter, it is probably a really useful book. He goes through and talks about, like, here's an example, here's how I would trim it down, etc. Not for me. In the first Sterling and Stone book, I'm giving a 3-star to. So, a little bit sad, but it is what it is. The next book I read was Poirot Investigates. It is the third book, at least according to Goodreads, in the Hercule Poirot book series. And it was my audiobook that I read this month. It is a collection of Hercule Poirot short stories. And I am going to do a detailed review on that because I want to go through each story and my individual rating on the stories. But my overall rating for the book was a 3 out of 5. It was okay. I like Hercule Poirot, but so far I don't love it. I am a mystery reader, and I feel like I really want to have the background of Agatha Christie books and Sherlock Holmes. That's another author I plan to read at some point, because I feel like that will help me understand and appreciate better the modern mysteries. And I also would like to try my hand in the future at writing a mystery, and all of these things just make me want to read the more classic stuff and see what I can learn from it. Poirot, I think the thing that I don't love about the Poirot books is a lot of the times it's so out there and it's not something that you could guess. You didn't get enough information that you could easily guess what was happening. It's like your detective will be like, well, their teeth, this is actually from one of the books. Their teeth were white, and had they been drinking the coffee that was a clue, their teeth wouldn't have been pearly white. So I know they didn't drink the coffee, and so I know who the killer is. And it's just like, I don't remember them necessarily when they found the body being, oh, look, pearly white teeth. But even if they had, I would not in any way have been like, oh, so they didn't drink the coffee. I just would assume they had white teeth. So there's a lot of that in the Hercule Poirot world that I don't love. I'm not doing as detailed reviews of most of the Hercule Poirot books. I tend to, books that I have a lot to say about, do a full review on, but the Poirot books, right now they're just kind of candy books for me. I'm just going through and being like, okay, I'm reading it, I'm interested, I'm moving on. So, but since that one is a short story collection and there are so many stories, I will probably go into a detailed review of that one at a later time. So keep an eye out for that. If you want reviews of Hercule Poirot books, I recommend going over to Mara at Books Like Woe. She did a whole Agatha Christie Poirot readathon and Marple readathon, and I think she's finished now, where she read all of the Agatha Christie books. And I've been watching her reviews after I read a book to kind of get some perspective. She has so much insight into the historical parts of the stories and the history and the social stuff that was happening. And honestly, like, I just don't appreciate it the way she does, but it's worth listening. She brings a lot of insight. The biggest issue I have, I guess, with the Poirot books is because they were written in the 20s. There's a lot of language that is not appropriate today, kind of racial slurs and things you wouldn't say because they're not appropriate, but they were used back then. There's also a lot of misogyny. And so just, they're interesting for what they are, but I can't be in love with them like I am with certain modern mystery stories. All right, the next book I read was Lipstick in Afghanistan. This is about a girl who is a nurse, and she goes to Afghanistan as a volunteer to try to help the people there. Now, she is not put in a very good situation because it's not like she is going to a clinic to volunteer, but she's like the only one. She gets thrown into this place where she doesn't really know anything. She's like given 2 people to help her. She's like, there's like, here's a cook and here's a chauffeur, and then there's some doctors at that clinic. Good luck. And so it's really about her kind of floundering around as she tries to learn things and make friends. And I had really mixed feelings about this book. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. This book has amazing setting. I learned so much about Afghanistan, and the woman who writes it is a humanitarian aid worker. So that part I think was really well done. I learned a lot about Afghanistan. I learned about a lot about the culture and the customs. There's also some really strong women in this book, and I appreciated that and was fascinated by, even though we're all different, these women are still, even within the confines of their society, that at the time of this book really didn't allow much freedom, they are still able to be strong and to do things that we don't necessarily, as American women, think of being common for women who are, for instance, wearing the burqas and stuff. We don't think of those women as rebelling and rising up and doing things that, especially to save other women. And that there's a lot of that in this book. This book is very pro-women, and this book is very interesting when it comes to Afghanistan. Now, the things I didn't love, and there were a couple things that were pretty big deals. Number one, there is a romance in this, and I just didn't like it. It felt very sudden. She sees a soldier who has blue eyes, I think blue eyes, and she's instantly smitten with him. And they have kind of a romance that I didn't care about at all. Another thing that I didn't love is just the writing style of this author. I think this is a book that has an important message and it's an important story, and that's why I was able to read it, but the author's writing I just didn't connect with at all. And it may be one of those situations where the author would have maybe done better to hire a ghostwriter. Also, this is her first novel, so it could be that she will just improve writing-wise later on. But the writing I did not find particularly engaging. As a matter of fact, I found it difficult, and I didn't enjoy. Just a lot of the things about the way this book is put together didn't work for me as a book, and normally when that happens I would give a book a 2-star rating, but there was enough in this book that I liked that I really can't give it below a 3-star. But I do think there's a lot of structural issues that make this hard to read, including just the way it's written and the author's voice. Now, some of that may be preference, but I just, the writing itself I didn't like. The story and the setting I thought was important. Along with not loving the author voice, the other issue I had is this book, it doesn't have much in the way of plot. It does, but I got really lost in the plot. It's not a very linear, simple plot. It was very strange, and I didn't love the plot of this book. And it's so difficult that I can't even really explain it to you. The best thing I can give you as plot is the girl, what is her name? Elsa. She goes to Afghanistan as an aid worker, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens in between, and then she leaves Afghanistan after she is relieved of her duties as an aid worker because she made some choices that were not what was wanted by the humanitarian association that was giving aid to the Afghanistani people. So, yeah, this book I had real mixed feelings about. I wish we could have had the setting, exploration, and the women with a more cohesive plot, and also with a style that I could appreciate more with the writing. If you know other books like this, if you've read this and know other books like this that maybe are a little bit stylistically, I hate to say better, are easier to engage with, I guess. I'm sure that this book is a 5-star for a lot of readers, and I'm sure that this style works for a lot of readers. It just didn't work for me. And this plot, I found it convoluted and confusing, and a lot of things just kind of happened. I didn't feel like there was a message with the plot or a theme with the plot. It was like boom, 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 boom. That's not for me, but that might be for other people. This book is good. It could have been so much better if I'd have had more of a plot and different writing style. So that's kind of my thoughts on this book, and this was a 3 out of 5. The last book I've read so far this month is The 100-Year Diet, and it is about America and weight loss, and particularly how we have been taught we're in an obesity epidemic, and we are, but people in America have been trying to lose weight and been fairly unsuccessful at it since World War I at least. So when people really started noticing that weight was an issue, and even back then the obesity levels were not what they are now. As somebody who is overweight, it was interesting, and who has tried different diets and not had a lot of success, it was interesting seeing what people have been doing, what the author thinks is the best diets, kind of the author's thoughts on the different diets that have existed, how they compare to other diets. Just, it's an interesting book if you struggle with your weight and kind of want to see that this is not a new struggle. People have been doing it for 100 years. Kind of see the origins of some of the diets and see things like that they've been around for a lot longer, just renamed, like the Atkins diet. There was something before that, and I like the keto is kind of similar to the Atkins as far as being low carb and higher fat and stuff, and all that has been around for a long time. You have the opposite, the vegan, the high carb, low fats, that's been around for a while. About the only new thing in the dieting world is the surgery, and that is kind of unfortunately what the author feels is the only long-term solution, and even that is not for everybody, because unfortunately with the vegan and the keto and everything else, a lot of times you have to do them forever, and that's not always practical to do them forever, and so people often don't. It's just not something that a lot of people, most people who lose weight, unfortunately eventually gain it back. She also talks about different kinds of diet pills and things that have been offered for sale in the last 100 years. It's a really interesting book, especially if you struggle with weight and have wondered, is this a you problem? No, this has been going on for 100 years. There's a lot of money in the diet industry, which is problematic because how many people really have your interest at heart when they're trying to help you lose weight? It was interesting, an interesting view on the weight loss industry and the problems of obesity in America. So worth the read. A little bit repetitive at times, a little bit sloggy at times, but nonfiction tends to be. All right, guys, this is the end of my part 1 wrap-up, my mid-month wrap-up for September 2019. Have you read any of these books? What have you read this month? What was your best read, and what was your worst read if you have them? Also, if you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy to meet you, and I hope we'll be able to continue to engage and talk. Feel free to leave a comment below. Feel free to subscribe, like the video. All those things are helpful to me. My social media is below if you would like to contact me off of YouTube. Also, just so you know, I'm a writer. I have books available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, on Kobo, basically anywhere books are sold. My books are probably sold online. So if you would like to read one of my books, I would really appreciate it. That certainly helps me to be able to produce videos and produce content. All right, guys, this has been Jane. Thanks. Bye.